Thanks for joining us in our YouTube channel, books, podcast episodes on living the enlightened life, and autobiography with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.
Dr. Jim Weldon, speaking from my hometown where I grew up, Cocoa Beach, Florida. Going through the different chapters to discuss the development of the enlightened mind, talking about the wisdom that children have and their abilities. My difficulty as a child is that there was many feelings that I was having that I wasn't able to explain. And I couldn't communicate those as a child. Memories were coming up of the past. In my case, a life in Tibet. I found everybody around me was confused. And believe it or not, the first spiritual teacher in my life was my dog, Coco. And she was the only one that I could find at that time in my life that wasn't miserable. She always came to me with love, her tail wagging. She always spoke to me through those bright eyes filled with excitement. Coco always said, "I love you, I miss you so much. Can we go out and play?" And together in Cocoa Beach, Florida, we'd scamper through the yard in the woods, running through the trees surrounding my home. And after half an hour of running about, she would come up and say, "That was great fun. I'm so thirsty, I'm hungry." So I'd fill up her bowl and plop on the ground beside her and actually also eat her dog food. And this is a little picture of Coco, kind of similar. German Shepherd, completely black. And even at that time, there was some subtle perception that I was going through. I could look into her heart, and it was like a beacon of love coming out. And through that, the frustration that I was experiencing or seeing through other individuals broke down. And I learned from that simple love of my pet, intimacy, and not necessarily to imitate the adults around me. But on one side, I would feel the confusion of sorrow of the adults around me. And even as I started school at this point, elementary school was really a lot of fun. But there was something that was happening which I really couldn't explain. Something was draining away the joy that I was experiencing. You know, I'd smile and play like the other kids, but inside there's a battle going on. And after a few minutes, I'd play with my toys, but I just wanted to be alone in silence. And at this point, I started withdrawing, sometimes for hours at a time. So as I'd explore our house in Cocoa Beach, I was always looking for a secret hiding place. We had a little cupboard, Lazy Susan, that spun around. The cupboard would open and there was a space in the far back of the Lazy Susan that was hidden. And I would climb into that area in the back of the Lazy Susan, behind that, and sit in there sometimes for hours. So that was perfect. So no one could see me there. And my mother would come into the kitchen. I could hear her cooking and talking, but nobody could see me. And I'd huddle in that dark space sometimes for hours, watching and listening. So for me as a child, sitting alone in the dark was really mysterious. There was something mysterious going on. As if there was something in the environment that was calling to me. Sometimes I'd fall asleep back there and my parents would be alarmed. They'd start running around looking. And my sister would find me and says, "Oh, there he is. He's hiding behind the Lazy Susan again." And my mom, my sister, and the barking dog would peek into the cupboard and find me sheepishly looking back at them. Another hiding place that I found as a child was a clothes hamper. Now, the clothes hamper in the United States is a kind of a closet that folds out, and you would drop your clothes in there when they were dirty in the bathroom. And I was small enough that I could actually climb into, it was about maybe 2 feet off the floor, I could climb into that clothes hamper, which swings open at the top like a box of detergent, and I would climb in there. And with all my strength as a child, I would open the clothes hamper. There was a few clothes. I'd climb in there, and my weight would shut the door. And sometimes I'd catch my legs. I was hanging out. So the hamper was a nice place. It's padded and dark. You know, after a while, I realized in the hamper that I actually can't open it. Someone would come into the bathroom, and there would be like a ghostly voice which would come out of me crying for help. So after being caught in there, that wouldn't work. So I kept on looking for a hiding place. And sooner or later, they'd find the new hiding place. And if they couldn't find me, they would call the dog, and the dog would start running around, smelling everything and hunting for me. Also about that time, I discovered tools, hammers and nails. And I actually started building retreats at that time. Now, those of you that know me and know that I'm a founder of several spiritual centers and retreat centers, and actually I'm the co-founder of the largest spiritual community retreat center, at least as far as facility, on Heavenly Mountain, where the Art of Living Retreat Center is, and many other properties are there. I actually started this way back when I was a child. And so I started building platforms above in the trees where I could sit up in the trees. My house was surrounded by palm trees in Florida, Cocoa Beach. Actually, that process of building trees continues for 15 years. And my greatest treehouse project happened when I began college. And I built a complete bedroom up in the palm trees on the roof with electricity screens, even a folding ladder, so no one can disturb me. But the problem is that in the treehouse, it's too bright in the daytime. And sometimes I would sneak out at night, and my parents never knew that I would sneak out in these areas. Now, there's a purpose to this discussion, because one of the best places that I found was in the garage, which there's a platform above our garage where we put wood. Nobody could find me there. And believe it or not, I would collect all my little magic toys, a candle, matches, and actually I would take some cigarettes, a little wooden staff, a broken mirror, and a few bottles. And in the gloom, I would light the candle and sometimes a cigarette. It wasn't that I would smoke, but I really liked to see the smoke drifting. And in that space, sometimes I could hear like a drum or a pounding in my mind, and I would see people dancing through the smoke around me, kind of in a transcendent space. And I would see phantom places, faraway landscape, mysterious things, like in my dreams. And I would bring my friends up into that area, but they wouldn't see anything. I would look at the walls. Everything seemed alive. Everything seemed sparkly. And I was amazed in that space, as if there were tiny dots of light, small red, white, and blue fireflies going around. And I was wondering, what was I seeing? Sometimes smiling and perhaps ominous faces in my imagination. And I'd open my eyes and I'd look around again. And then sometimes they would come and go. And a powerful drum, as if, would come up. And I would hear maybe far away gongs and bells and chimes, figures. I didn't realize that I was seeing images from my past. But not all those times were fun. especially early in the morning. And sometimes I would wake afraid in the dark. Something was coming to get me. I don't know what it was. And nearby in my bedroom, the oil furnace was burning and the air would click on and off. And the sound of the burning furnace, I'd feel like somebody was coming for me, that I was sitting in the dark. And I'd look at myself, I'd look around. Sometimes I would look in the mirror, and I would look into my own eyes, and it would seem as if there were other eyes, other faces behind that, as if my face would change a little bit. And it would frighten me, it would fascinate me, and shivering waves of happiness and joy would run through my body, making me feel alive. And I was wondering, what would happen if I completely let go to this? If I just let myself go into that, where would that feeling take me? It was as if I was pushing ahead on an unknown door. And I was afraid to let go, but like a tiny caged bird, I was feeling confined. We're confined in this space, this little tiny body. We are outside of it or inside of it. But I felt like I was trapped in this tiny space. And then began some of the early journeys of stepping out of the body, leaving the body. And that begins chapter 4. And the poem there is, wealth and fame climb stairs up to nothing. Beauty and power is a shadow in time. Youth and achievement are gone in a moment, while our skills of brilliance build sandcastles of rhyme. As if this is really like a dream. It really is. So I remember beginning chapter 4 on an afternoon. I'm lying in my bedroom, feeling the breeze go in and out through the room. And there's a kaleidoscope of colors. My home is 2 blocks from the beach, which I'm in Cocoa Beach now. Going back, I'm a child of 6. And I want to go to the beach, but it's too late because dinner is coming soon. And in my mind, I can see the beach so clearly. And I'm wondering, why don't I just go? So I think suddenly from my bed, kind of clothed in a form of light, off I go. And in an instant, the walls of my house become transparent, like sheets of glass. And like a tiny sunbeam in my mind, I can go where I want. And I pass through the living room in my house like a stream of light, following the last rays of the sun in the evening. And with this second sight, I can see my mother cooking dinner and my sister watching TV. And I look over my mother's shoulder to see what she's cooking. And I can see the bright red spaghetti sauce boiling on the stove, rich with the aroma. The water's boiling for the spaghetti. The garlic toast rests in the aluminum foil in the oven. And this is one of my favorite meals. So the texture and the taste of this, you see, our senses go with our consciousness. This is what's happening with the intuition program. With the children, the Art of Living intuition program, where these children can see at a distance, they can hear at a distance, they can read books from across the room, they can color crayons, they can ride bicycles, not all of them, but some of them. So the senses are in consciousness. And in that subtle space, we can really experience this. And every drop of oil, I remember back then, was so clear. Every spice, every drop of oil, the subtle flavor is completely open to me. And I dip my hand into the imaginary boiling water to taste the taste. So I'm not burned. It's not real. It can't be real. But why does the sauce taste so good? How can everything be so clear? Just as if I was standing in the kitchen. Remember, I'm back in my bedroom. across the house. So dropping this, I go on to the beach. So I pass through the living room, out the front door. I'm watching a cartoon on TV that my sister is watching. She laughs, and so do I, as Bugs Bunny foils Elmer Fudd. And these are characters, you know, Elmer Fudd is the guy that's always trying to catch Bugs Bunny. You may not have seen this in India, but the whole neighborhood appears before me. I can see in all directions at one time. And there are cars zooming down the street, dogs and children playing in the backyards. So I zoom down into a car and see one of my friends and her mom just returning from the grocery store. Their shoes and groceries, new shoes. I can't stop now. I'm off to the beach, and dinner is coming soon. And my mom is setting the table. So our consciousness is big. Part of the journey to the enlightened mind is to learn that not just an imagination. I mean, all of these things ultimately can be verified. So I have to go to the beach quickly before the table gets set. It's time to eat. So I'm racing up and down the beach, through the waves, following a flock of pelicans, soaring. A vision of the spaghetti comes back again. Then the fish in the ocean, and I laugh and wonder where this curious idea and experience is coming from. So waves are bursting on the shore, a tiny crash, and a return to my flight. Like the pelicans, I'm drifting over that space across the horizon. I'm like a pilot soaring on an invisible glider. And looking into one pelican's eyes, you know, pelicans have these orange eyes. I see it like my own eye. The same life is shining in those eyes. And sailing along the shore, it looks and feels so real. But of course, I'm thinking, it's only my imagination. All of a sudden, I hear a call, and my mother is calling me back forth, and I'm shaken out of this experience, and it takes me back for a few minutes. I feel my body and surroundings. So jumping up, heading into the living room, past my sister, watching the cartoons on the TV. And I run in as a small child of 6. I hug my mother's leg. She looks down at me with love. I look into her eyes, and I see that same mysterious sparkle, just like the pelican at the beach. And on the counter, there are all the herbs. So many, many children take imaginary dreams like this. And many of them say they have imaginary playmates. They may not be so imaginary. It's just that they don't have a language to describe. So children really do know the truth. In many cases, they can see the oneness. And later, after, go down to the beach, and often some of the things that I see and the people that I see, the people are there. And I wonder, how can this be true? It filled me both with wonder and fear. Wondering that it was possible to fly like a bird and have no form, to be like a ghost or a ray of light. How to float in that big space, that nothing is solid. To be like a cloud drifting in space. You know, I wonder if it's real or not real. You know, the senses, hearing, touch, smell, sight, they actually are connected to consciousness. They're inherent in consciousness. And in that greater consciousness, large and small is really the same. Because in that expanded space, a grain of sand can appear as large as the world. You can take those senses with you. It's strange for me as a child. So it's as if the smallest part of my body, even weight, can feel like a ton. And at the next moment, I can't feel my body at all. It's as if the eyes all of a sudden can become gigantic. They can spread out in the space. Nobody that I talked to as a child ever mentions anything like that. You know, this is the time when I was going to elementary school. And in Cocoa Beach, Florida, it was called Freedom 7 Elementary School. It was named after America's first manned space capsule. My home in Cocoa Beach is just a few miles from Cape Canaveral. I'm there now, today. And the name Cape Canaveral comes from the swampland that formed a long island along the East Coast. This is before it becomes Cape Kennedy. And the land that I'm in is like a huge sandbar, a long strip of land with water on either side. And in these early days, building is going on like crazy because the space industry is developing here. And my father is an Air Force colonel, and he works with the downrange telemetry, the tracking the missiles. This is before NASA. And almost every week, a missile launches. I could actually walk out my back door through the 60 or so palm trees out to our little dock on the back and watch these missiles take off. And the night, I'm reading a little bit from the book, paraphrasing also, the night launches are the coolest because the whole night sky lights up. It's like there's a giant inverted candle going up through the skies, and the ground shakes and blasts. It's just like cartoons that you might have seen. And often the missiles will go off course at that time, and they'd explode. So these are great fireworks. And I'd lie in my little bed, and I'd hear the rumble, and I'd run out into the backyard. We were about 15 miles away from the launch, and the missiles, they're huge. It's exciting. And so this draws me back into ignoring these subtle experiences, into the dreams, away from the dreams. So I start to pretend in a lot of ways, and I don't understand because the adults are pretending to be happy, but I can see and feel inside of them, they're not very happy. When I feel frustrated, I start imitating this as well. And with this imitation, or kind of putting on a face, something inside of me dies. We're in a time where many of our latent capabilities are going to begin to emerge around the world. The children are still connected to this up into the age of about 4 or 5 years old. They're connected to this wisdom. Many of them may have flashbacks like myself. In the first few parts of this, part 1, 2, and 3, which I encourage you to read or listen to, I was having terrible nightmares of being imprisoned. And I didn't know for many years that this was Tibet. Later in my life, the founder of the Art of Living actually sends me to that region. As I become a teacher for him, one of the first things after I become a teacher to teach programs for that organization, first thing he does is he calls me, he says, "Yogadhi, you can only teach in jails." He sent me to prison. You know, I didn't want to go into prison. I had big fears of that. But, you know, we need to face, this is part of the work, to root out these stresses within, to release those. So the ongoing journey into the enlightened mind. So in the next discussion, we're going to be talking a little bit about what happens with the passing of my pet. He actually dies. And then also my father, who becomes ill, has something called multiple sclerosis. He was a very, very sensitive child. And I was feeling his experiences, in some cases others' experiences, as my own. Because the reality is that this little space that we're living in, that we're experiencing, we're going to break this bubble ultimately and discover that the life that we are is everywhere, all around us, throughout the entire universe. And connecting to that, why would we connect to that? Because the quality of joy, the quality of happiness that we experience as human beings is severely limited. And being expanded to this bigger life, whatever you want to call it, will bring huge insight, huge joy, huge happiness. That's what I wish for you and the whole world. Today, do something good for somebody. Do a random act of kindness. Reach out. Thank you for taking the time to hear a little bit more about my secret journey. We're all on that secret journey to the enlightened mind.
More episodes available now on our YouTube channel, and Apple and other podcasts available. Friend us on Facebook. Books on the Autobiography of Yogadhi, Living the Enlightened Life, available on Amazon.com.